So let's talk about Carrie Johnson. She herself already pregnant, but she, of course, would have had her jab previously, before this pregnancy, from due to her age. She has been encouraging pregnant women to go and get themselves jabbed. There's been a real concern from the medical and scientific establishment that women who are pregnant are, by and large, not getting jabbed over concern for their unborn child, fears about miscarriage, fears about damaging their child long term. First of all, is there a risk to women from getting jabbed, or is there a bigger risk to not being jabbed, according to the JCVI's research?
Yeah, there's no risk to pregnancy from the jab. There's been a lot of people who have been pregnant and been vaccinated, and there's absolutely no signal that there's a problem. Whereas we absolutely know that getting COVID, if you're pregnant, is a risk, both to the mother and to the child. There's quite a high incidence of premature delivery as a consequence of catching COVID. And if you are pregnant, having COVID, you're more likely to get severe disease and end up in intensive care than if you were not pregnant.
And do we know why that is?
Well, there's probably two main reasons. One, when you're pregnant, basically your lungs are smaller. So you've got less reserve. And if you get a pneumonia, you've got less room to cope with it than you would have if you weren't pregnant. And secondly, the immune system is altered by pregnancy, and it may be that predisposes to catching more severe COVID than you would otherwise catch. So, yeah, it is definitely a thing. And we have seen in my own hospital quite a few pregnant women on intensive care, and that is not good.
Indeed. I mean, you can understand, though, why a lot of women would be concerned. I mean, I remember my pregnancy, you were told not to take anything other than paracetamol, for goodness sake. Don't even take an aspirin. You must, be so wary. We know that the trials for the vaccines weren't carried out, understandably, on pregnant women, although, of course, some of those, perhaps part of those trials, some of those women did become pregnant during those trials. You can understand a lot of women being concerned about this. How do we allay those concerns if actually there is a risk in them not getting jabbed?
Well, by communication, by doing what we're doing this morning, Julia, and talking about it and saying that actually a lot of people who've been vaccinated or pregnant, there's no signal, there's no danger, no safety signal at all from the vaccination. And people who emphasize the problem with vaccination or pregnancy have got it the wrong way around. The problem is COVID and being pregnant. And if you prevent COVID, you're much better for your baby and for your own health than getting vaccinated, than not getting vaccinated.
Let's also talk about the rollout of the vaccine to 16 and 17-year-olds. I can remember talking to you some months ago where it was decided that actually there was no need for under 18-year-olds to get the vaccination. The trade-off on the risks, the tiny risks of the vaccination to younger people versus the tiny risk of COVID causing severe illness or death in that cohort having been weighed up. What changed to decide on the rollout to 16 and 17-year-olds in England?
We got a bit more data, more information about the rare complication that occurs maybe in 20 million people of this inflammation of the heart and the lining of the heart, which is called the pericardium. So it's called a myocarditis and pericarditis. And the information that we got was twofold. One is that actually most people who catch that side effect or have that side effect, it's very mild and doesn't seem to have too much in the way of significant problems. And two, the chance of getting that side effect is mainly with the second dose rather than the first dose. So that allows us to give the first dose without having to be too concerned about that side effect. And we're taking a bit of time to work out what to do with the second dose whilst that first dose has been given.
Bit of a concern for a lot of parents, I would have thought.
Yeah. I mean,
we think it's okay for the first one. Worried about the second one, but we've been told repeatedly, unless you're double jabbed, you haven't got protection. Why do 16 and 17-year-olds who are at incredibly low risk of having serious complications from getting COVID, when we know a huge percentage of them already have antibodies, largely from having COVID, why would they need to take any risk at all in having the jab?
Yeah. Okay. So you're basically rehearsing arguments and discussions that we've had over many weeks, and you're showing why it's been a very difficult decision to come to. I think what you can say is that the first dose seems to be not really associated with side effect because about 40% of this age group have had COVID. In fact, having one dose is like having two doses anyway. So you get the benefit of the vaccination much more strongly than you would do if you never had COVID before. There is a significant amount of people who children, adolescents, don't call them children, who end up in hospital, and that is not a good thing for a 15 or a 16-year-old to end up in hospital. It's definitely an unpleasant experience for them. So although the chance of getting really severe disease and ending up dying is vanishingly rare, there's still a significant chance that within that vaccinated group, a few thousand will end up in hospital and having a very unpleasant time.
Okay. I can see you're wrestling with this. This has been a very marginal decision. How much has politics played into this? We're told poll after poll after poll says that parents want their children vaccinated. I absolutely don't. My daughter's had COVID. She's 14. She's healthy. I think that the weighing up of the risks from vaccine, from COVID, it's a clear-cut one for me there. We're told lots of parents are so damn terrified of this virus, and they haven't looked at the stats in terms of risks to a perfectly healthy teenager. They're desperate for their kids to be vaccinated. Has there been political influence on the JCVI and your committee to actually change your position?
I think political influence is a bit not accurate, but I think there were data from surveys of the age group saying that they were in favour of the vaccine.
Why is that relevant though?
Well, I guess so if you've got a 70-year-old, it's very clear cut. Vaccine is very good for their health. If you have a 30-year-old, it's a bit less clear cut. And then you've got a 17-year-old, it becomes even less clear cut. And the attitude of that age group itself, if they were not keen on having the vaccine at all, then a rollout would be going against what that age group would want, and that I don't think would work.
Since when do we roll out a vaccine on the basis of what 17-year-olds want? 17-year-olds want to go dancing and buy new clothes. I mean, go drinking, for goodness sake. Whether they want a vaccine or not should be irrelevant. Well, do they need the vaccine or not? The answer a few weeks ago was no, they don't. And then suddenly it changed to yes, they do. And I'm asking, has there been political influence? And I'm getting the impression that yes, there has been.
So I'm going to hit back at you there, Julia. So actually, a few weeks ago, the answer to the question was, do they need a vaccine? Was let's wait and see. And actually, we did wait. We saw the data on the side effects was much less of a problem for that first dose. And so the decision to roll out the vaccine was based on that. Okay. Now, the other factors that you mentioned actually come into it a little bit. I mean, it's like a seesaw. You've got the bad bits of the vaccine, which is very rare. You've got the good bits of the vaccine, which is pretty rare in that age group. Yeah. But there's a bit more that balances towards giving the vaccine, which is the side. And also there's the benefit for controlling the infection, or at least making the waves of these infection less high and making them sort of bubble along rather than go like this.
Okay, Professor Jeremy Brown, we'll have to leave it there. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. He's a member of the Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunisation.